Right.
All right, so we are now called to order. So we'll look at the approval of the minutes from February 10th. And everybody got a copy of that with their packet? Were there any corrections? I didn't have either. Okay. You make a motion to approve?
Seconded, or so moved, I guess.
Okay,
And I'll second.
thank you. All right, there's a motion to approve the minutes from February 2nd. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, so moved. The minutes from the last meeting have been approved. All right, are there any public appearances today? I don't think. All right. No public appearances. We're going to go to the agenda. Anybody have any discussion about the agenda before we approve it or make a motion? Okay, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, so the agenda is approved. Okay.
I have a comment. Can I make a
Okay.
comment?
Sure.
About minutes and things like that? I used to be an editor / proofreader in my real life, and I see that kind of stuff, and I just wonder, like with this ordinance, when it's like ready to go somewhere, I'd be willing to take it and read it for that kind of stuff, if you guys want me to.
That would be awesome.
Okay. So I'm just putting that out there. That's what
Great.
I know how to do, so.
Wonderful, good. Thank you,
Yeah, that's excellent.
yes.
I'm
All right.
making a note.
Good. Good.
That will be in the minutes. Don't worry.
Good. All right. So the agenda says we start with Common Council update. Gabriella.
Yes, thank you. So I've got 5 things today. Number 1 is an update on the ARPA TID number 6 spending plan. That's the federal money plus the taxpayer funded tax increment district money that's being closed. Update is number 1, the tax increment district has been officially voted to be closed. We did that at the council meeting on Tuesday night, so that is continuing to move forward. And then in terms of the spending plan, Alder amendments were submitted last month. We actually had a discussion at the last committee of the whole meeting about the amendments. And there's this period of time in between when there's an opportunity for community feedback. I did submit 3 amendments that are related to tree advisory. Amendment number 10, which is the money for emerald ash borer affected tree replacement. Number 11 is update and complete tree inventory, which is to hire a consultant to go ahead and do that, which we talked about last time is one of our final steps to getting a Tree City of the World designation. And I did look it up, and it looks like we would be the 2nd city in the state of Wisconsin to receive the designation if we do complete both of those steps. And then number 13, which is startup funding for a municipal tree nursery, and that's that pie in the sky idea. I decided to put it in as an amendment, mostly not because I really think we would use this money for that, but mostly because I just kind of want the idea on the record. And I plan to be here for several more years, but you never know. So I always like getting things on the record where possible. So I'm actually thinking about polling it, just because I don't actually think when all this money is said and done, we will spend it on that, because it's more of a far out idea, but I will definitely bring it forward for the CIP process later this year. And then in terms of if you want to testify or submit feedback or, testify to your support for the amendments, these ones are any of them. I think there's, let's see, there is 24 total amendments, 24. There is a public hearing at the March 22nd Common Council meeting, March 22nd, that's Tuesday evening at 7:30 p.m. And then there's also, you can always submit written feedback to the council members, and you cannot request for it to be read out loud. And you can also just register and support without writing anything. Those are all your options available to you. Any questions on that? before I move on?
Would you just repeat what it looks like on the agenda, what the title would be, or the amendments are?
Oh, so it's the spending plan, ARPA TID spending plan, and then it's amendments. The tree amendments specifically are number 10,
Yes.
Emerald Ash Borer tree replacement, number 11
Right.
for the tree inventory, and number 13, which is the tree nursery startup funding.
And this is for the money that the city received for the COVID relief, correct?
Yeah, it's actually two groups of money. So the first is 3.2 million in American Rescue Plan Act, which is federal money. And then the second group is about 2 million. We're not exactly sure, but around 2 million of tax increment district money that was left over for tax increment district number 6, which is the area over near the Target, Hy-Vee. That area over there is the tax increment district that's closing. Yeah. And I will say too that these amendments, they're a little less. It's different than the budget process or even the CIP because it's not as concrete. We're just indicating what we want to spend the money on, and then it has to go through the CIP process and the budget process to actually get funded. So I'm hoping that there isn't an issue passing these amendments just because it's not really, we're not allocating money at this point. It's just a plan. So we'll see how it goes. But I'll definitely be pushing for that, especially the Emerald Ash Borer tree replacement, because I think this is the perfect use for that money because it's one-time expense. We can't debt finance it through the CIP, and we can't, it's really hard to find it in the operating budget. So I think this is like a perfect one-time use money in my opinion.
And these are great because both of those things are goals kind of carried over from TAC over the years that we haven't been able to do yet, to have sufficient funds to replace the trees and to get the inventory completed, which sounds like that is a very critical thing for us to do moving forward. So thank you. That's really, really important. Thank you.
And any other questions on that? And I have a few more updates as well. Okay. Second thing is just a Resource Conservation Commission update. I mentioned it before, but April 9th is going to be the recycling event. That's the electronics, confidential paper shredding, and med drop. That's Saturday, April 9th in the morning. It's coming up soon, really soon, which is surprising. It's almost April. But we are looking for volunteers. RCC typically is able to staff it, but if anyone's interested in volunteering, please let me know and I can connect you with the staff member that's organizing it. Second thing from RCC is we also are planning the annual Waterway Cleanup. That is going to be on Saturday, April 23rd, assuming that the weather holds, and we always have a rain date as well, but April 23rd is the plan. We don't have a sign up just yet, but I just wanted you guys to get on your calendar in case you do want to participate. And then May 19th that's a Thursday evening. That's a plan for the RCC annual event, similar to the tree diversity event we did last year in conjunction with them. And it's going to be focused on invasive species. There's this organization that's doing a lot of work to educate about invasive species in the area. And so that's the initial plan. It's very early stages of planning, but I thought it's very relevant to this commission. And Anna, has anyone reached out to you about it, or just so you're aware?
And I mean, we work on invasives all over the city and we have quite a palette to choose from. So yeah, if they want to reach out to me, they can do that.
Great. I'll make sure I let them know that we should make that happen. But there is an organization that's going to be running the event. Not expecting you to run it at all, Anna, but it'd be great for you to be involved.
Gabriella,
Sure.
could you say the date of that again?
Yes. The plan is May 19th, which is a Thursday evening.
Glad I clarified. I was thinking 15th and I was like, I don't know if that's what she said. I would have had the very wrong date written down.
Yeah, I had a question about the waterways cleanup too. What waterways and what kinds of things are they going to clean up?
It's several different waterways. I mean, so Dunn's Marsh, Yarmouth Greenway, Swan Creek, kind of different areas all over the city. And then, so each is kind of its own separate.
So, and what are they cleaning up?
It's trash mostly, trash
Okay.
pickup, but a bit, and it depends on the people. Sometimes I've seen them pull tires out of the waterways and things of that nature, but it's kind of at your discretion, but primarily it's trash.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And we provide gloves and garbage bags and all those things. The only thing we don't provide is the pickers. As if that was something you'd have to provide on your own if you want, but all the basics are provided by the city of Fitchburg. Okay, and then number 3 is there is going to be a vacancy for tree advisory. That appointment starts in April and it's a 3-year term. So please feel free to share it around. I will certainly be asking people to that I know that might be interested to consider putting in an application, but there's no reason to wait. You can go ahead and put in an application at any time. And that's true for any commission.
We were just notified that somebody was retiring from the committee,
Yes.
correct? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Is that Jim or
Jeremy.
Jeremy? Sorry. I back in my hometown, I knew somebody named Jim Hecht. And it just, Jim and Jeremy, they mix together in my head constantly. So, Jeremy.
Yeah. Jeremy has done a lot for the city of Fitchburg and tree advisory, and he will be sorely missed.
All right, number 4 is more of just kind of a general update. There's a couple of big things happening in the city. Number 1 is the Hub Park project that's in the North Fish Hatchery Road area. It's on Traceway Drive right off of Fish Hatchery Road. It's a big, significant park. And it would be the first city park in that area of town, which is pretty wild because 11% of Fitchburg's population lives in that part of town. That planning is kind of in its final phases and going through, and hopefully we'll be actually allocating the money for it this year. It's in the budget, but we always have to finalize the budgets for it. So that's an interesting thing to follow. Also, the Madison Metro has been doing a network redesign study for a couple of years now. They have released draft maps and there are significant changes. So if anyone's interested in bus service, I know it's very much ancillary related to tree advisory, but there are significant changes such as getting rid of transfer points, making things more direct access and also run more frequently. So it's a very different different take for the Madison Metro Network, but I think it's interesting and worth taking a look at if you're interested. And then the last, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. I just want to say for the hub, I would really encourage everyone to look at the plans. You may notice there are very few trees outside of those plans. And I already brought this up with some of the plant staff. And I said, you know what, it would not be difficult to add, grass terraces that would help with stormwater issues. And we could actually plant trees in this area. And then I was told by some people, well, this is an urban park, we're not going to have trees. And I'm like, well, I think we can. We do have a 30% canopy goal. Most of the private trees in this area are ash trees. They are dead or dying. We really do need to be proactively thinking about where to put trees in this park. There's a lot of opportunity to do it if we don't do it in the planning stage, we're going to lose that opportunity because it is going to be pretty paved. So I would encourage folks to look at the plans and maybe, submit some feedback, because there are a few like shadow trees on there. There's no way that those trees can be supported by the green space that's allotted for them. So I just would encourage folks, take a look, think of it from a tree perspective and think of it from the 30% canopy goal perspective. And that would be awesome.
Well, and that was, when I came to the meeting today, that was one question I had, Anna, is whether or not that 30% canopy tree initiative is being applied in the city.
I bring it up a lot.
It's interesting because I have not had a chance to watch. It was presented at the committee of the whole.
Yes.
But since that time, there was more discussion, and they recently, within the last week or so, they had a Parks Commission meeting, and they talked much more in depth about updated plans. And I know, as you all know, Sue Easterday chairs that committee, and I know she's an advocate for trees, but I have not watched it, so I can't say if that discussion about trees came up. But obviously, we're watching that. So that might be that's the most up-to-date information that exists in the city.
Gabriella, would you describe again where this park is going to be?
Yes, so it's in the North Fish Hatchery Road neighborhood. It's right next to the High Line, which is that tall building right next to the golf course on Fish Hatchery Road. It's Traceway Drive, which is parallel to Fish Hatchery. It's going to be right up Traceway Drive.
All right, thank you. All right.
Great. And then the very last thing that I find exciting, I told you last time that the police department purchased a hybrid vehicle. Well, the Parks Department just purchased a hybrid vehicle that we approved on Tuesday night at council. And actually it was under budget, even without any contribution from the hybrid electric vehicle fund. So I was pretty thrilled about that. It's a recreation vehicle specifically, but kind of a fun update. And that's all I have, unless there's any questions. Okay, thanks.
Any other discussion? Thank you. Thank you very, very much. I'm very excited about what this means for an environment period. So thank you. All right, next agenda item, municipal nursery presentation.
Yeah, so I put this together. I put it together a little bit quickly, but I wanted to share this with you because there's been some rumblings of municipal tree nursery, and before that momentum dies or it gets squashed or whatever, I just want to share some things with you just to think about from a couple of different perspectives. So I'm going to try to share my screen here and bring this up. Everything on your screen, including, okay, so, ooh. I'm on my phone, which makes it tough, but we don't have good internet here, so it's a little bit of a challenge. All right, can you guys see this?
Not yet.
All right.
And if you want to forward me if it's in the email form, if you forward it to me, I can pull it up on the screen too, if that's helpful.
All right. I'm a little embarrassed. I can't make this work. All right. All right, let me. What is going on here? I did this and it worked earlier today. All right, let me, I will email it to you, I guess. And then you'll have it, which will be nice, but.
Oh yeah, I'm very excited to see.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm really thrilled about this because it sounds like it's a pretty
so I have
rare.
So I didn't want to. I know there's a lot to it, and I don't want people to I don't want to lose I don't want to lose the momentum. All right. Hopefully this will work. All right. And I'll probably get it to work as soon as I get done emailing it here.
We actually did get some testimony from people that are not on tree advisory in support of the municipal nursery after the amendments came out, which I was pretty pleased that people liked the idea that hadn't, that we don't know of. So that's exciting.
It is. Okay. Anyway, did it come through?
I don't see it just yet.
Please. Come on. I should have figured out a different way to do it. Did it come through?
I haven't seen it yet.
Ah, geez, come on. This is so embarrassing. I should have, I guess I should have stayed at City Hall and did this from there.
Do we
Oh,
want to perhaps amend the agenda real quick to move to the tree protection ordinance, and then we can come back and see if we can solve this technical
Sure.
issue in the meantime?
yeah,
Okay.
that's so.
The motion to do that?
Yeah, so I'll move to move the tree protection ordinance up in the agenda to right now.
Okay. Second? I can't second. Can I second?
No.
Okay.
I can
Can I have a
second.
Okay, thank you. All approve? All in favor?
Aye.
I,
Aye. Thank you. Okay.
Who,
So
who
moved.
made, Carol?
Pardon?
Who
I made
this?
the Gabrielle made the motion.
And then who made the second?
Sue.
Round.
Oh, thank you, Sue.
Oh,
I was muted. No wonder. Classic. Okay, so I guess we're on to the tree preservation ordinance. So the the draft has not changed materially since the last time we met. I did circulate it to people. I haven't gotten a whole lot of offline feedback, so I'm hoping some people have some feedback. I know Anna has some things to bring up. But if anybody else has thoughts or feedback from the draft that was included in the last minutes, I think I'm very open at this point. There are some things that we maybe can't move too far away from, because that's where we've been kind of pushed into by some of the city people. But we do have a good amount of flexibility still. So
Okay. Okay. So I guess one thing I just wanted to bring up to the group, and I was bringing this up to Craig and Linda a little bit, is I think it's great, and I think we're really on the right track. I just wonder if, from a couple perspectives, I think we need to be more clear about what trees we want preserved, and I think we need to spell that out in the ordinance. And then I also just wonder, there's a couple different ways to do how we do the preservation, and there's pros and cons to each one. We either spell out the tree preservation steps in the ordinance. As Craig has mentioned, the problem with that is if we get new information, if the tree moves on, it's really hard to change that. So we may have to, it might be better to, reference a policy document that can be living and breathing and updated as standards change and as we get more information on tree preservation. But I do think we need to kind of nail those two things down, because I think the success of this ordinance, similar to our tree planting ordinances, when developers look at that tree planting ordinance, it says, you have to plant a tree every 80 feet or in front of every lot, whichever is greater. That's very easy for them to understand. And most importantly, it's easy for them to put a dollar sign on, so they know how to pay for that somewhere else in their development. And I think we need to make the tree preservation ordinance similar in that developers need to look at it, understand exactly what's being asked of them, and pretty much be able to figure out the cost without too much effort. And then I think we'll have a lot easier time with it, moving forward and getting it through different committees and ultimately having success. So I think we just need to kind of clear up a little bit, and not necessarily at this meeting right now, but we just need to kind of clear up, are we going to require a preservation of all the heritage trees, all the specimen trees, all the high value trees? Like, what exactly are we going to ask to be preserved? And how are we going to do it? Are we just going to put a clause in there to say, hey, you have to create a a tree preservation plan that adheres to these specific industry standards and best management practices? Or are we going to spell out X, Y, Z? You have to put up a tree protection zone. It has to have a chain link fence. You can't do any grading, beyond the fence. The tree protection zone is 6 times the DBH of the tree, all that kind of stuff. So, and maybe it's a hybrid of both things, but I think we just need to kind of work on those details a little bit, and then and we'll have a much stronger ordinance. And then I think people will actually really know what's being asked of them and what it takes to satisfy the ordinance. Because I think developers are just going to want to know, what do I need to do to satisfy this ordinance to move on to the next step? And we need to just kind of make that a little bit more clear, so there's no kind of mystery or ambiguity. And the other thing is, like, when whomever is reviewing these tree ordinance or these tree protection plans, there needs to be some kind of standard as far as, hey, this isn't good enough. And we need to have that in the ordinance, because just the forester or just the plan commission saying, hey, this isn't good enough, usually doesn't work very well. We have to be backed up in some way by some ordinance. Hey, this isn't good enough because it doesn't meet the ordinance in these specific ways, if that makes sense. We can't just say, hey, this isn't good enough because we know it's not going to work. if that is makes sense to folks. So,
and do you want me to share? I have your presentation. It looks like you
Yep.
have some slides. Do you want me to share your?
Sure, if you don't mind. They're kind of like,
Yeah.
I had to completely finish it because I ended up getting really busy today, but yes. So I did put some stuff together for this. So I'm glad you got my PowerPoint. So I did put some stuff together for tree preservation ordinance. The other thing I wanted to mention is I just don't know if we want to add tree planting to it, because it makes me very nervous, because I feel like people will get confused between tree planting and tree preservation, and will just be constantly fighting a battle there. And I think we should just leave tree preservation as it is and let our tree ordinance stand. So anyway, so I put together, and I had sent out a document to folks that was kind of like, that kind of addresses some of these tree preservation requirements. I think it's great that we've got this in the ordinance. I just think that we need to really get it a little bit more clear to whomever is having to satisfy this ordinance, if that makes sense.
And I don't know if you can see it, Anna, but do you want to let me know if I should advance the slides or?
Yeah, I mean, you can go to the next one if you want to. I think the next one is what I should talk about. So this is what I sent you guys via email as part of that document. So I kind of outlined these are actually some of the standards for tree planting. But so in this slide, I do at the very end, the last sentence, I kind of define what tree preservation means. I don't know if we want to add this to the ordinance or not, but we never really defined what tree preservation is, and which not everyone has the same idea of. And maybe if we use this definition, trees designated for preservation should survive in a healthy and structurally sound manner for at least 10 post development. I think that's great, because we do have trees that survive development, but they're all beat up and they die, 3 or 4 years later. So, but someone who would say like, hey, we didn't cut that tree down. So I think we just need to distinguish between tree preservation does not mean just not cutting trees down. It means actually preserving them in a way that they will be healthy, structurally sound for a decade or better.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yep. Yeah.
So, and I want to add that to the definitions, but just so it's really clear, like, hey, we're not asking you just to refrain from using the bulldozer. We're asking you to pick these trees in a way that they're going to survive long term.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And after thinking on the tree removal thing, I think, or the replanting, I think it makes sense to maybe pull out the replanting part. What I'm most concerned about with any changes, to be very specific, is I think the more hardline our ordinance is coming in, the harder it's going to be to get any support for it. So I think we should at least temper our expectations about what is likely to be politically feasible versus what we can start with. And I think starting with a more detailed, here are all of the requirements, and then having maybe an idea of if there's, if it's not going to pass that way, what could we fall back to? I think might be a practical, just a thought process. And then if we end up getting the support and passing with the higher level, I think, all of us on this committee probably would be fine with that. And that would be a big victory as well. So I think maybe just having that, when we talked to the mayor, which was now a long time ago, it feels like, he was pretty cognizant of the developer pushback that was likely to happen for any increases. So, we'll just have to keep that balance in mind.
Something that will help them being very specific as you're discussing, so they know exactly, what is expected, and they'll know how much it will cost.
And one idea that I had, and I don't know, I haven't talked to Scott about this, but one idea I had is if we could kind of tie this in some way, because they end up paying fair bit of parkland dedication fees and park improvement fees. If
Right.
we could, it would, in my mind, make sense to tie this tree preservation somehow to a reduction in those fees, because this is a tree we don't have to plant and grow. You know,
Right.
I mean, we're instead of like bulldozing the whole site and saying, here's your park, you know, we're going to preserve a tree there that's,
Yeah.
you know, it helps with, you know, that whole park improvement process right off the bat. So I feel like that's a natural fit, and then we get more developer buy-in.
Yep.
I think so. Those are two things. We'd have to talk to planning, and we'd have to talk to Scott Endel, the parks director, about it. But it seems like that to me seems like a natural fit. Like if we can somehow work the tree preservation with credits towards parkland dedication or something of that nature, I think that could be an easy sell, and also just, you know, it would accomplish the goal that we're looking for, which is to, you know, preserve enough area around these trees so they survive, and and then people can enjoy them. So to me, that seems like a good fit. I don't know that, you know, I don't know how other people feel about that.
Linda, do you remember the mayor actually also was a big proponent of the parkland credits idea
Yes.
when we talked to him? Do you remember who he said? Was it Scott Endo as well? Because I have.
It wasn't Scott,
notes.
but maybe that's where we would go first. But
Yeah.
I'm thinking that would
I
make
think-
sense. I think
Misty Dodge might have a better understanding.
Yeah,
of
it was-
Misty, that was the
their
one that he brought up.
finance director.
right. And then Andrew McFadden was another name, another person that we wondered about. Lisa McNobila.
So Andrew McFadden is the transportation engineer, and then Lisa McNabola.
Right.
She actually recently just left the city. She was the assistant city planner.
Okay.
But our new city planner has started, so she's in the role now.
Okay.
So maybe next steps on that, because I do think if we can couch this in something that is financially potentially beneficial for developers, it will be more popular, and that's, you know, what we want is to protect the trees. And if what that takes is maybe giving them a credit, you know, wow, it's cheaper for us to just keep these rather than
Right.
planting new ones. That's an all-around win, as far as I can see. So
Yeah, I know when we talked about some of that initially, I think that some of it was state regulated, and we didn't know if we could. do
It
something
is.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
it is. We probably have to talk to legal as well.
And that's Misty, right? Yeah.
No, legal would be Valerie.
Oh, okay. Right.
but Misty is the finance person who maybe is a
Okay.
good place to start. I mean, the struggle with all of this, and the reason why we've been kind of going back and forth as long as we have, is that it's really tough to get everybody in a room to talk about this and make the meaningful progress. But also, you know,
Yeah.
we talk to one person and then get
Yeah.
moved to somebody else, and it's
Yeah.
kind of a process. So
Well, when we get everybody's input today, and as we move on, maybe we can figure out a time. I think we start with, it'll probably be me and well, of course, Craig, and then Anna meeting with people. Is that what we're thinking? And then maybe the three of us can schedule a time where we could, you know, make decisions about that and decide who's going to reach out.
That makes
yeah,
sense.
I don't want to cut other people out of the process, but I also know that if we get too many, then we have to do the
Right.
we have to do minutes and make it a whole meeting. And
Yeah.
so if anybody else is interested in being kind of involved in more of those meetings, please reach out to me and let me know, because I think we can be a little bit fluid about who is talking to these people and just make sure that we're all involved. I'm happy to have more people interested in participating, but I don't want to try to make every meeting everybody, because I think that does kind of it ends up less productive by trying to be more productive in a lot of situations. So
Oh, I agree, and I'm happy to assist with any of these meetings, however it works out. So it sounds like, you know, trying to tie tree preservation to parkland, either dedication or improvement fees or something of that nature, or something we want to potentially pursue, at least the conversation. It sounds like we're going to add the definition of tree preservation to the ordinance. And then I think the other thing that, you know, and then it sounds like we're going to take the tree planting I think we should, like I said before, I think we should remove the tree planting piece because, like I said, we have a tree planting ordinance. It's very successful. And I think the success of it is it's super simple. It's like, this is what it is. This is what it costs. Moving on. You know what I mean? And I talked to Craig a little bit about this. Part of the success of that ordinance is we collect money from people and then the city does the work. So we have complete control over the contract, over how the tree planting is done. And so the language that I pulled for you for this meeting that I sent you in that document, I pulled that from our tree planting contract. That's not in ordinance. That's in our basically a policy document of how we do this. So I think we need to kind of discuss a little bit, or maybe just think about and discuss later. Like Craig had said, do we want to make the ordinance, lay everything out, or do we want to make the ordinance refer to a policy document that can be living and breathing and be updatable? So, and there's pros and cons to both. So it really depends, on how folks think it should move, what's the best thing to do moving forward. And I did, so in getting this PowerPoint together, I did just put together as one slide. I don't know if Gabriella can share it, just on like some of the things that we want to include in terms of, what the tree protection zone would look like and things of that nature. So, yeah, so this is, by standards, it should be the tree protection zone should be 6 times the DBH of the tree. Maybe we want to go more. I don't know, and then we need a fence that's not going to be easily backed over. And if you do back over a chain link fence, it's clear that it's been backed over, which is kind of nice. It has to be visibly marked that no one can go in there. And then we'd have to exclude at least these activities: the grading, excavating, storage of stuff, stockpiling of dirt, any runoff, any ponding or erosion, and of course, any attachment of things to the tree, which seems obvious, but that does happen. So, and this is just something I threw together really quickly. And these are some of the standards that we refer to. So at any rate, so I think just food for thought for the group. What I'll do is I'll put together the document that says, okay, these are the standards. This is what we need to do. We either have that as a policy document or we put it in the ordinance, just as however the group wants to do. I did put I don't know if you can share it, Gabriella, but I pulled a graphic from the Fairfax, Virginia tree ordinance, just that shows they have a tree protection ordinance, Fairfax County, Virginia. And what was that? And it's just a picture of what it takes to have the. Why is my phone not? What?
Oh, yeah.
I'm getting a lot of feedback all of a sudden.
Let's make sure everyone's muted. That's not Anna right now. Maybe that's part of the issue.
Huh. I don't know what's going on. At any rate, I don't know if we want to share that slide. That's the picture, and we can have these drawings made up if it's helpful, either in the policy document or in the ordinance, whichever.
One thing, I haven't seen any other drawings in the ordinances. I might be missing something somewhere because there's a lot of ordinances, but I'm not sure that as a format and logistics question that we actually include them anywhere, which I think maybe is a sign that this could be a reference to rather than in them. Valerie, I'm sure could clarify that, but there's a whole lot of ordinances that I haven't seen, so maybe it is something that we have the kind of, I don't want to say the capability. Of course, you could always work around it, but if it's something where this is the only drawing in the entire thing, I think we kind of face the problem of that's just not how our ordinances are structured. But this reference, I think, is important anyways. And I think, Anna, you're right that if you have kind of a policy document, then we can try and figure out how much of that we can just fit right in the ordinances and how much of it needs to be referenced out. But having those guidelines is something that I don't think anybody else on the committee has the technical know-how to do. So you know, I could Google some things and then say, oh, we probably need to stay away from these protectable trees, but you know,
Well,
it's going to be
And
without.
Anna, did I hear you say you had a recommendation about that? Who could do those?
Well, yeah, so in our spec manual, so we have a tree planting diagram in the spec manual, and we just have to hire someone to do a technical manual or a technical drawing that basically depicts exactly what we're talking about. And it doesn't have to, like Craig says, you know, having it in the ordinance maybe isn't appropriate. Maybe it's better to have it in the spec manual, the City of Fitchburg specifications manual, or in our policy document, or both. And I mean, the beauty of these technical drawings and technical documents is it's pretty specific exactly what you can do where.
Anna, you're muted. You're muted for some reason.
Tech problems abound. My computer crashed entirely at the very beginning of Anna's talking about tree preservation ordinance.
So at any rate, I guess I was just saying that you know, if we have technical drawings, it's very helpful because then in a glance you can see, okay, you know, the fence has to be 12 feet high and it's indicated right there. It has to be in the ground 6 inches. The signs have to be 12 feet apart or 20 feet apart or whatever we say. And if it's in these technical drawings, which most people are used to looking at who do this kind of work, it's a little bit more clear as to what it needs to be. And then the other part of it, the enforcement is so much easier because you can point to the drawing and say, like, can you make it look like this? Can you make that fence look exactly like this? And that's really very helpful, or can be very helpful in terms of the enforcement.
Well, I'm so happy that you bring to this table lots of experience with developers and the things that tend to go awry, even with good intentions, because I have a feeling that that's how you're making decisions about what we need to incorporate. So I'm really thankful for that. I also wanted to say so was this in the Fairfax, Virginia ordinance, the diagram?
Yeah, it was. It is. Well, so I was a little confused as to Craig's point, I was a little confused as to what was their ordinance and what was their policy, because it was all in the same place. Okay. I did talk to the person who developed the ordinance. He no longer worked here though, but he said that I talked to him, it was probably almost a year ago, and I talked to him, he's now in New England, but and I talked to him and just said, like, you know, you guys have one of the best ordinances in the country. How did you get it done? This, and the other thing. And what was, you know, kind of what is the secret sauce there? And he did say, he's like, you know, you really want good technical drawings, and you just need to be out there. You just need to be out there, because if they know that you're serious, which I think people understand I'm serious, if they know you're serious, you know, it's going to happen. So, so anyway, it's, yeah, I
had another follow-up question. If the decision is made that it'd be best in the spec manual or policy manual, does the developer, do people have as the same kind of access to that as they do in ordinance?
No, we'd have to give it to them, which is okay. You know, I mean, we'd have to make them aware of it.
Yeah, my only concern is it's not like you have an administrative staff, I don't think, in your office or somebody to help with that. I just wonder if that will be, how difficult that might be.
It might be. You know, yeah, that's a good point.
Well, it's kind of, there's some amount of, you know, tail wagging the dog where we need, you know, as a tree forward committee, what we want is a ordinance that requires more tree resources so that we have more trees, which we might need to get the ordinance in place before we can justify more resources, which then would allow us to maybe do the ordinance, like fulfill the ordinance a little bit better. I think there is some value in maybe, you know, stretching our capabilities rather than settling on what we currently have as an option. I'm happy to keep talking about this, and I do have some other questions maybe for Anna, but we also, I don't know if we have a hard cutoff at 5. We only have about 10 minutes left for the other agenda item, so.
You know, I'm happy to talk to you offline, Craig, if that works. I really appreciate everyone's time and attention to this. And I totally agree with your thought process of, hey, let's do the right thing. and the resources will follow. I think that's the right approach. So if you guys are willing to let me tickle your ear a little bit about municipal tree nurseries, I would be happy to do that if Gabriella is nice enough to share my presentation, because I'm challenged and can't seem to share the screen.
Yeah, hold on just a second. Let me bring it up.
Okay, thank you.
All right, everyone should be able to see it now.
Awesome. Even I can see it, so that's progress.
Excuse me, Anna. I just wanted to let you guys know that there's no meeting until 6:30, so you've got way past the 5 o'clock time.
Oh,
Okay, great. Thank you for letting. Okay. So I just thank you for indulging me here. I just wanted to tickle your ears a little bit about municipal tree nurseries, because like I said, the topic has come up and I don't want to kind of let the momentum sort of fade away. I think it's great that it came up in a couple of different contexts. And I think there's a lot that can be said and a lot that we can do with in terms of municipal tree nurseries. And I think a lot of you know that in the past, I worked for the Department of Agriculture, and I was in charge of implementing and enforcing the emerald ash borer and gypsy moth quarantines, but I also did nursery inspections. And so I've walked all the nurseries in the southern half of the state, and I know those growers, and I also worked with some of the out-of-state growers on compliance issues. So I'm pretty familiar with the nursery industry, and I'm pretty comfortable talking about it. And I'm in my current job before the pandemic, I used to go and walk nurseries to figure out what trees were growing well and what we should be speccing in our tree planting. So I'm kind of excited to talk a little bit about nurseries from the municipal perspective. If we can bring up the next slide, realistically, so the issues with nurseries and the reason a lot of municipalities do not have them is because they do take a lot of skilled labor and they do take a lot of equipment. So on the left here, we see the trees growing in a row. Most of the time, a nursery will grow a tree for between 3 and 8 years before it's able to sell. And then they have to dig it. And on the right there, you see the tree spade. And if you can see on the left, those trees are growing without any competition, which means you have to take out you pretty much grow them in dirt. So it's a lot of herbicide and it's a lot of mowing. It's a lot of time. The other thing, if we can have the next slide, growing trees takes a lot of technical expertise because you're training them. What you want is you want to establish a central leader, and you want to establish scaffolding branches, and you want to establish the lowest minimum branch, and you want to make sure that that tree is going to have structural integrity to hold up to the urban environment for a lifetime, right? So there's a lot of pruning, there's a lot of training that goes on with these trees. If you mess it up any step of the way, you end up with a tree that structurally probably can't recover and probably is not a good candidate for an urban tree because it has some kind of an issue, be it a double leader, be it scaffold branches that are crossing or whatever happens to be, that's going to cause a hazardous issue, and it's not appropriate to be planted in the street. So the next slide, I took some pictures of trees that have great structure. This is what you want. You want that central leader, you want those scaffolding branches, and you want the lowest branch at an appropriate height for whatever you're doing. And you want good trunk taper, and you want good branch taper. So we could potentially grow trees like this in a nursery, but it probably wouldn't wash out for us from a money perspective because we can buy these kind of trees still relatively quickly. And it's not an easy thing for volunteers to be plugged into. However, I would really like to point out, if we could please have the next slide. There is such a thing that I think we could do, which I think would be great, which is called a community gravel bed. And in this kind of a nursery, instead of like growing and training trees, you're growing roots, which I think we could do. I think we could do it really well, and I think we could do it very successfully. These are 2 pictures of community gravel beds I think they're from Minnesota, but they're from not far away. I think we could totally do this. If we go to the next slide. So what you do in a community gravel bed, instead of buying bald and burlap trees like we do now, you buy bare root trees. This is a picture of a London plane tree. This is an excellent ash replacement. It's a beautiful canopy tree. We don't have very many of them. It's a wonderful tree to put in our parks in places where we've taken out ash trees. It provides a lot of ecosystem services. And we get a lot of traction with these trees. They do very well in the city of Fitchburg. We could buy them like this tree is, nice central leader, and the training is done on these bare root trees. They already have the scaffolding branches. But if you get to the next slide, instead of a bald and burlap tree, you buy a tree that is bare root. So it doesn't have very many rootstocks. It doesn't have that many roots. So the problem with bare root trees is they need to be staked, and you kind of need to babysit them for the first, excuse me, 3 months of their life because they don't have any support. Well, if you put them in a gravel bed, you grow those roots. And, in this picture, it's the same tree. The picture on the left is when you first get it. The picture on the right is 12 weeks later. You get this wonderful mop of roots. That tree now has a lot more integrity from wind, from vandalism, doesn't need to be staked quite as much, and will just take off and catch up to any other trees that might be bigger that have been planted. If we go to the next slide, this is basically what you get. This is in La Crosse, where they have several community gravel beds, and this tree was planted in April. This is probably October, and that's the root mass that you have. So it's really an interesting. It's really a nice way to get that tree ready to get in the ground, get it ready for winter, and just get it set up for success. And that's a fairly sizable tree. It's not. We're not talking about sticks or whips or small trees. We're talking about trees that already have 2 or 3 branches, preferably 3 branches. And if you go to the next slide, and the other thing is, like, there's a lot of examples of success with this in communities. There's this document from Minnesota that just basically is a cookbook, spells out exactly how to do this, which is really nice. There's also just a lot of success stories from municipalities around the state that have had really good luck with their gravel beds, including Dane County. So we have one, not far away. It's just on the other side it's on the north side of city of Madison, that we have a lot of expertise to draw from, is what I'm trying to say, if we decided we wanted to do this. If we go to the next slide. So just to let you know the time, we're talking about 1 season, which is nice because that eliminates the need for expensive fencing. One of the biggest challenges in growing trees are deer. And the deer are a problem in the winter. So we would eliminate that, which would be really nice because, in a few cold winter nights, deer can destroy your trees, especially your young tender trees that you're trying to grow. This way we don't have that issue. You order the stock in December, January, whenever you can order it. It comes in March or April. There is a bottleneck in that as soon as that nursery stock shows up, you got to get it in the gravel. You have it in the gravel. And then you spend the growing season growing those roots. And this really does lend itself to volunteers. It really does lend itself to community involvement because anyone can come and water those trees. You just turn on the soaker hose and turn it off. Anyone can do the weeding. And there isn't really that much weeding typically, but anyone can come and just pull any annual weeds that show up in the gravel. Anybody can look out for the Japanese beetles or whatever that are a problem. And, we then, alert people to take care of that. So it really does. And these are also, it's easy to plant these things in pea gravel. So there's ample opportunities for the community to get involved, which I think is great. And I think people would really enjoy this. And, it's also a nice thing because it's a season. So we're very flexible on species. We're very flexible on, it's not like we plant a tree in 2022 and we're not going to dig it until 2028. It's a seasonal thing. The turnaround is short enough that we can really take advantage of, species that are working for us or not, or whatever the case may be. So basically, when you lift the trees in August or September, the other bottleneck is as soon as those trees are lifted, they do need to be planted. You can't really let them sit around and let those trees dry out. But again, this lends itself to volunteer stuff. If folks want to come and help lift trees and plant them in parks, perfect. It's much easier to plant these barefoot trees than it is to plant a bald and burlap tree because they weigh 40 or 50 pounds instead of 300 pounds, which is kind of a nice change. And then October, you get the gravel bed ready for winter, and then you're done for the year. So, I think the time frame potentially could work in terms of, it's not as big. You don't have to babysit these trees, every day for many years. You just have to, you just have to take care of them for one growing season in the gravel bed, then you put them where you want them, if that makes sense. All right.
What size is the bare root stock?
Well, it depends on what you want. I mean, you can get what are called liners, which is what nurseries buy, which are tiny whips. And those are not very expensive. And you can get it all the way up to almost as big as the bald and burlap trees that we plant. So you can get it up to about an inch, which I think we'd probably want to go the larger if we can. So you can get it, in theory, you can get it relatively big. Now, availability is obviously depending, but that's what we'd be going for.
So does this mean our tree budget could go down for the year, and then the trees that we end up planting are higher quality as a result of this work?
Potentially, we could try that. The only thing is, I would say, and if we go to if we go to the next slide, which I think is the advantages. So the advantages, we could do this with seasonal staff and increase the operating budget. And all these, there's all these things I probably already mentioned that you kind of limit the need for skilled labor because the trees are already trained. And, it's just working one growing season at a time, which lends itself to the seasonal workforce. But getting to that last point, it would cut our costs roughly in half for trees. But if we go to the disadvantages, I don't know, we'd have to try this out. I don't know that we'd want to plant these trees right away in the terrace. I think they'd be okay, but we'd want to try that out before we did a mass terrace tree planting. These trees would be really great in the park setting. The other thing I wanted to bring up is we have this big invasive shrub issue. Every public space that we own practically is full of either honeysuckle or buckthorn. We could mass produce native shrubs in a gravel bed to replace those invasive shrubs potentially. So anyway, I appreciate you letting me tickle your ears about this. I just wanted to throw this out there as an idea. If we want to pursue this, I think it's great for the ARPA money potentially. If that doesn't happen, it might be something that we put in, there's a sustainability plan coming up. Maybe it's something that gets tucked into the sustainability plan. Maybe we decide that we're going to finish the urban forestry strategic plan and we put it in there. Maybe it goes into park operating. I don't really know, but I do feel like we really could, you're right, Gabriella, we really could grow more trees. This would be a way I think we could at least start. And maybe this goes farther and we end up with a nursery on top of this. I don't know. But in terms of just getting started, getting our feet wet, growing trees, I think the community gravel bed would be a great way to get started. And I just wanted to share that with everyone because I'm not sure everyone knew about this and I didn't want to, and so I just appreciate you giving me the time to share.
Yeah, I love this idea. I've never heard of this concept before. So this is, and I love that there are local examples and expertise to draw on, which is in particular very helpful. I mean, what I'm thinking right now is that I have an opportunity now to amend my municipal tree nursery amendment to make it instead a pilot for, what is it called? Community gravel beds.
Perfect.
To pilot it so that we can, and then the cost would come significantly down. And we can view it as a pilot, which is very much a one-time expense. And then if it works in a year or 2 years, we can add it into the budget as a regular operating expense. And 2 years from now, the budget may be able to easily accommodate that additional staff cost and operating budget to be able to run these. So I guess what I would love to do that. I guess the only thing I would need is maybe this information is great because I can share this with the council, but I would just need to kind of update. I would just basically write a new version of the amendment and amend it on the floor to make it targeting this rather than the bigger tree nursery idea.
I think it's very, very exciting, really. I mean, this just sounds ideal for where we are as a urban community. Yeah.
I appreciate
it would be great. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that feedback because I just never kind of know what people are thinking. And I thought, well, I'm throwing this on the agenda. I'm going to put it out there. If people like it, great. If they don't, at least I've got it off my chest. Mm-hmm. So
I'm really excited about this. Do you have any idea what the scale of the money we would need to pilot this?
I mean, we could do, so that's a good question. If we don't need, the sticking point is the fence, right? If we don't need the fence, and I think we could probably get away without it. I don't know. I'd have to look into it, but we'd need the lumber, we'd need, obviously the gravel, and then the stock. I'd have to look into what that stock is. Right now, the trees we want to buy are between $20 and $100, right? Depending on what it is. Shrubs are pretty cheap, but those trees are, and so it's the nursery stock is the wild card, and that's constantly changing. It's not constantly changing. It's just that inflation is hitting the nursery industry. I mean, just like everywhere else, which I think is a good reason to do this. Yeah, I mean, I can get that together for you and do a little looking together.
And it doesn't have to be perfect, but I mean, like, so right now I put in, I mean, like, really, it was essentially a random number. I put in $100,000 for the municipal tree nursery startup costs.
Oh, wow.
I had no idea what that was, what the actual, and the spending plan's not meant to be a finalized document, but so I was just throwing out a number because I have no idea. But if the number is a lot lower, if we're talking 30,000, 40,000, 50,000, I like the idea of changing this amendment to be a pilot of this. It's much more easier to glom onto that as a one-time use, and the cost comes down to add it to the spending plan. So, and then I can work on it to add it to the CIP, add it to the budget later this year, and we can kind of make it a full-blown process. But if I can just get a real ballpark of what it might cost,
that's no problem.
all I need.
Yeah, I'd be happy to get that too. That'd be no problem. And I feel like there's no reason we can't do things like this. It's just we have to, put our shoulder into it, so to speak. So similar to the tree preservation ordinance, we just have to keep working it through. So at any rate, does anyone have any questions or comments for me in regard to this? Or I'm glad you don't think I'm crazy.
Very exciting. Very exciting.
Yeah, I really agree.
Maybe we should do a field trip to one of the gravel beds.
Yeah, that'd be great. That would be
great.
Yeah, let me talk to Adam, who is the Dane County guy.
That would be great. Yep.
Yeah. So I think that's totally possible. I mean, I went there to look at it probably 4 years ago, maybe. It was pre-pandemic, so it was a while ago. And they were growing all kinds of stuff. It was really exciting.
Can we get a copy of this, and then the other things that you shared about the recommendations for the ordinance?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
I can share that with you. Yes, no problem.
Okay.
And I wonder, well, if you want to look at that manual, it's written by Minnesota Extension. It's very easy to read. It's a very much a cookbook situation. So if you want to look at that, if feel free, I can send you the link.
That'd be great. That would be great. Thank you.
Wow, I'm psyched. This is great.
I'm psyched too.
It's perfect timing. It's perfect timing because it gives me enough time to put it in. And I really do think this is great use for the ARPA TID money.
Yeah, well, that's why I added this to this agenda. I'm like, now is really the time. I mean, if we're going to talk about this, let's talk about it. I feel like it's So I appreciate that. And the other thing is, if it doesn't work out for ARPA TID, we're in plenty of time for 2023 budget, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So, and I think you're right, Gabriella. You need to bring these things up to get them on the radar, so to speak. And that's kind of, I think, a good way to do things.
Yeah, I'm glad I threw it in because I thought it was a pie in the sky, but now we can focus it down to something that's much more concrete and nearer term. So.
Yeah, and I did share this with some key, I think our key city staff. I'm like, hey, just so you know, I'm throwing this on the tree advisory agenda. This is what it is. If you have any questions, let me know. So I think it should not be a mystery to people, or it shouldn't be. I mean, it's kind of odd when you say community gravel bed. It's like, what is that? But it's pretty, once you explain it, it's pretty easy to understand. So, all right. Well, I'm great. Thank you for sharing that presentation. I'm sorry I couldn't get it to work. But I usually do this stuff on a different laptop that isn't really working. So I was trying to do it with my phone and I just could not figure it out. So I'm sure it's not that hard.
Like the real world. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Are there any other questions about it as we move on? Okay. All right. So department report, and I feel like you've been reporting a lot about the department throughout the whole meeting. So whatever else.
I gave a written report as well. The only thing I'll add is Earth Day, Arbor Day has kind of gotten, this is fine, but I didn't expect this. And instead of having one event in Quarry Hill, we are now having an event in Quarry Hill, Oak Meadow, Chicory Meadows, Gunflint, Pinnacle, and Terravessa. So there's a lot of people who want to get involved. So we're doing a lot of smaller events. I think it's going to be fine. But if people want to come out and plant trees, I mean, we're not going to say no. So it's those events are happening on the 23rd, which happens to be the Waterway Cleanup Day, and on the 30th. So there'll be a lot of tree planting happening this spring, which is great. I'm really grateful we're kind of getting back in the swing of that whole situation. And then
just to clarify, the Waterway cleanup's only in the morning. So I don't know if these tree events are later in the day or maybe a mix of both, but maybe there's an opportunity to do both, which would be kind of fun.
Yeah. And you know, yeah. And the thing is too, they are a mix of both morning, afternoon. And the other part of it too is like the 30th, there'll be plenty to do on the 30th if you're busy doing Waterway cleanups on the 23rd. So it's all exciting.
So let's see, and we'll have one more meeting before then too.
Well, the other thing I was going to say is I would be gone on May 12th, which is our May meeting. And we don't have to decide this now, but I was wondering maybe from a tree preservation ordinance situation, if we want to move that meeting to June when we don't have a meeting, just to give us some time to maybe make some more rounds or work on that ordinance a little bit. Unless, I mean, if you guys want to meet without me, you can, but I am committed to other things on that Thursday afternoon, and I can't be at the meeting. So that's just something to think about. We could easily move it to the next month, or we could move it to a different day in May, depending on what folks want to do. And we don't really have to decide till next meeting. I just want to throw it out there so it's not a surprise.
All right. If we did it in June, what day would we probably do it?
It would be the 9th.
Okay. All right. And then we can decide next meeting.
Yeah, you can decide. It's not a big deal.
Okay.
All right. And I guess I kind of did announcements as part of my report in terms of, one announcement I'll make is just that Dakota Doran did get that GIS job. And you may remember him. He first came to the city of Fitchburg as the Park Rec and Forestry intern. He worked with me. I was the first person who worked with him. And so we do have a good relationship. And so it's nice to have someone who knows trees and is excited about trees and knows kind of our department in that job. So that's great.
That's really great. All
I
right.
love doing that. That's great. Yeah.
I had several notes that I was going to ask you about. They've all come out in the meeting. So all the information. So yeah, even the tree inventory. So anyway, and plans for that. So all right. Anybody else? Anyone have any announcements to make? Or any other items to bring up? Okay. Our next meeting is April 14th.
All right.
Okay.
I'll move to adjourn.
Oh, second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Okay. The motion to adjourn the meeting has been passed. So
Great. Thank you, guys.
all right.